I'm going to read for you today is called The Whale Song. It was a favorite of mine when I used to teach elementary music. I hope that you will listen carefully and hear the whales singing in the background. Lily's grandmother told her a story. Once upon a time, she said, the oceans were filled with whales. They were as big as the hills. They were as peaceful as the moon. They were the most wondrous creatures you could ever imagine. Lily climbed onto her grandmother's lap. I used to sit at the end of the pier and listen for the whales, said Lily's grandmother. Sometimes I'd sit there all day and all night, and then suddenly I'd hear them coming towards me from miles away. They moved through the water as if they were dancing. But why did they swim to you, Grandma? Asked Lily. How did they know you were there? Lily's grandmother smiled. Oh, you had to bring them something special, a perfect shell or a beautiful flower. And if they liked you, the whales would take your gift and they would give you something in return. Well, what did they give you, Grandma? Asked Lily. What did you get from the whales? Lily's grandmother sighed. Once or twice, she whispered. Once or twice, I heard them sing. Lily's great Uncle Frederick stomped into the room. That's nothing but a silly old tale. Whales were important for their meat and for their bones and for their blubber. If you have to tell Lily about whales, then tell her something useful. Don't fill her head with nonsense. Singing whales, indeed. He sounds a little grumpy, doesn't he? There were whales here millions of years ago before there were ships, or cities, or even cave dwellers, continued Lily's grandmother. People used to say they were magical. People used to eat them and boil them down for oil, grumbled Lily's great Uncle Frederick, and he stomped back out of the room. Well, that night, Lily dreamt about the whales. In her dreams, she saw them as large as the mountains and bluer than the sky. In her dreams, she heard them singing. Their voices were like the wind. In her dreams, they leapt from the water and called her name. In the morning, Lily went down to the ocean, to the place where no one fished or swam or sailed. She walked to the end of the old pier. The water was empty and still. She took a yellow flower out of her pocket and she dropped it in the water. This is for you, she called into the air as she dropped the flower. Well, Lily sat at the end of the pier and she waited. She waited all morning and she waited all afternoon. Then as dusk began to fall, Uncle Frederick came down to the pier for her. Enough of this foolishness, he said. Come on home. You can't be dreaming your life away. Still sounds a little grumpy. Well, that night, Lily awoke suddenly. The room was bright and filled with moonlight. She sat up and she listened. The house was quiet. Lily climbed out of her bed and she went to the window. She could hear something in the distance. other side of the hill. She raced down to the shore. Her heart was pounding as she reached the sea. There, enormous in the ocean, were the whales. They leaped and they jumped and they spun across the moon. Their singing filled the night. Lily saw her yellow flower dancing on the spray. Minutes passed, or maybe even hours, and suddenly Lily felt the breeze rustle her nightgown and the cold nip in her toes. She shivered and she rubbed her eyes. Then it seemed the ocean was still again, and the night dark and silent. Lily thought, I must have been dreaming. She stood up and she turned towards home. Then, from far, far, far away, on the breath of the wind, she heard, Lily, Lily. The whales were calling her name. Boys and girls, I hope that you enjoyed the story, the whale song, and I hope that you listened carefully and that you heard the whales as they were singing.